of the M300, teaching them how to use the H20T thermal camera, and then we also combine a mapping day. That was today, and then tomorrow's inspection. Thursday is FLIR and night ops, training, and then we do hazmat training on Friday, and that's it. So it's a lot of fun.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. So
Student.
it's work though. It's good. It's work.
Yeah. It's good that we're still getting that during COVID times. Do you want to do this with audio, or do you want to unmute? Do you want to have your camera open? It's up to you.
I'm looking ragged. I'm looking pretty rough. I just finished my day, so I have not freshened up or anything. I've just shoveled food in my mouth. If you prefer, I could put a hat on or something. But
no, it's perfect. It's perfectly fine.
No worries. I apologize.
No, it's fine. We're going to wait for Nick and for Nick Massaneda and Andrew Ashur, but when they arrive, we will get started.
Excellent.
Hello, Andrew.
Hey, how are you doing?
Doing fine. Everyone, this is Andrew Ashur of Skyline, Lucid Drone Technologies. Thank you so much for coming. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
No problem. It's awesome to have you here. We are going to wait for Nick Massaneda to show up in the next 5 minutes, and then we can go ahead and get started.
Awesome.
Karl came in like a minute before you, so he gets to talk first, and then you go after.
Sounds good.
How is the company going, out of curiosity?
I was going to say, everything's going fairly well. It's a busy time right now. A lot of our customers are in the professional sports and university athletic space. So gearing up for the basketball season and just trying to make sure fans can be as safe as possible in their seats.
That sounds awesome. I hope a lot of students will ask questions about that when it comes around.
I'll be ready for them.
Alrighty, Bernard, who are we waiting on?
We're waiting on Nick Massaneda from Drone Parks. I'm about to text him because I have his number.
All right, awesome.
If you want to, Shazi, you can go ahead and get started. In about maybe 2 minutes.
Yeah, we can wait on him, or we can start, in 2 minutes. That sounds great. By the way, hi, everyone. My name is Shazi, and I am the Chief Executive Officer of the Collegiate Entrepreneurship Organization here on campus. So thank you guys for joining this call. It's going to be a great meeting.
And for those who have no idea who I am, my name is Bernard Lee. I am the president of University Drone Pilots at the University of Houston. Shazi and I started working together earlier this year to host this event, so we're co-hosts. Let's hope this goes well. Let's hope Nick responds to his texts. Okay, so Nick Masneda is texting me saying he's going to be a little bit late, so let's go ahead and start the event. Again, thank you all so much for coming to this event. Today is a good chance for you guys to, hang on. There are a lot of drones are the new technology of the future, and we're starting to see them pop up everywhere, from Amazon to Alibaba to even local places like DJI and small companies starting up basically everywhere. Today we're going to get a chance to talk to some of the people who have been in the industry for years and who have a lot of experience and are doing incredible work with their technology. I hope that as students, you guys learn a lot from this and take a lot of inspiration for how to start your own business and what you guys can learn. And with that in mind, we will go ahead and take it away with Karl Schwab of Skyline Drones, Texas. Karl, do you want to introduce yourself and your company?
Yeah, good evening. My name is Karl Schwab. I am actually part of many different companies, Bernard, and in order to make money in the drone industry, I've put myself out there in a lot of different roles. In Houston, in the Houston area, myself and my business partner run Skyline Drones. It is, a very small company, and I'm not always working with Skyline, but it is something that we're building as time goes along. My existence in the drone industry started almost by chance, and what happened was in the Houston area, I was hired as a pilot for mapping missions for light twins and single engine airplanes. So back in the 90s, I had gone through and got my private pilot's license, worked up through my instrument rating, spent time, getting my commercial license for my multi and single engine airplane. And really, I didn't ever utilize these. I was working for Raytheon Missile Systems Division as a software engineer and had seen the opportunity to fly, and I jumped on it. And back then in 1995, and by the way, guys, my son is a senior there at the University of Houston, so go Cougs. But back then, I had 3 kids, not 4. And to fly was not that expensive. It was like $35 an hour to rent a plane. That same plane today is $150 to rent. So it's really gone up in the last 25 years. Anyway, push forward all the ratings that I'd worked through, about 1,500 hours of flight time. So not a lot, but a decent amount of flight time. I find myself in Houston, and there's an opportunity to work for a local company in Houston called Visual Intelligence. And it's a very small company, yet pretty cool, because I was able to fly both as a pilot of an airplane and write software. No sooner did I start working with this group, and they came out and said, we're not flying airplanes anymore. And I'm going to tell you, I was devastated. I was frustrated. I was upset. I was not happy at all. I mean, who wants to fly drones is what I thought. And that's when we started working with this. It was over 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, we got our first drone. And our boss bought us this big meter-sized drone. It's called an S1000. And that was our first drone. We flipped it 3 or 4 times. I mean, in the first week, we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know anything about the different modes. We had no idea how to fly it. We weren't using any kind of camera on it. We were just flying this drone. And unfortunately, we had to go through that school of hard knocks. Fast forward to now, and I still work with that same group. And we have perfected tower flights, fully autonomous. Well, when we say autonomous, they are auto flights that are pre-calculated based on simplicity, like setting your home point, setting your centroid of the tower, and we fly those towers. And Bernard, am I able to share my screen at all, or no?
I can give you permission to do so.
Okay.
Let's see. Let me stop sharing. Let's see. Oh.
Let's see here.
Doesn't say that I'm allowed to give that to you, apparently.
Oh,
Let me,
well,
can you see it now?
I do. All right, so I do.
Okay.
Let's see. Can everybody see my screen? You guys see the cell tower?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the kind of quality we get from our drone mapping. Okay. And you say, well, it looks pretty good. You know, that's okay, Carl. Well, this was taken with the Sony A7R3 42 megapixel. Okay. And it's okay. It's an okay model. It was pretty good, you know, for what we were doing, but we've gotten better than this. We've got a platform now that runs 2 dual Sony A7 R4s that are brought together via a Raspberry Pi, and it's pretty amazing. And so we can do all sorts of measurements. We can do visual inspections. We can look for corrosion. And as you can see, this is sub-millimeter. We're able to actually go sub-millimeter on every flight, on every tower. It can be a lattice tower, it can be a monopole like this, and we can get some really incredible data. So we're working with tower companies like Crown Castle, American Tower, Vertical Bridge, SBA, you name it, we're working with them. And so this is something that has been what the owner of our company has pushed us towards for the last 5 or 6 years. Pretty cool stuff. On the other side, you know, I've also, in getting into business, telling you guys, what did I do? Well, I took my experience, you know, with the aviation industry. Let's see if I can share this screen here. Not sure this Zoom stuff gets me. Let's go here. You know, so for example, here's a map we did today. It's of a coker. A coker is a part of a refinery, and we're working today on mapping. And what I did is I was at a show probably 4 or 5, I guess about 5 years ago, and I met up with a company called Dart Drones. They do training, and I'm like, hey, you know, do you need a trainer in Houston? They said, yes, we do. And I said, well, I'd love to do it. And the rest of it's history. And with it, I've trained probably 10 different refineries across the U.S. I've trained probably 10 or so police departments over the last 4 years, and probably on the order of well over 300 different classes individually, whether it was just an open enrollment, so for basic flight training, or for the 107 prep, et cetera, et cetera. So in doing that, we teach mapping. And so if you look here, this is a model we created today. I call this the poor man's model with Drone Deploy. It's an okay tool. It's not quite as pretty as the tool you just saw with context capture. Context capture was the tool we were just showing you a minute ago. But as you can see, this is just a 2D model, but we're still able to get some 3D out of it. And so in this case here, we're working with, this is a refinery, and this is the output of the coker unit. It's kind of like an asphalt material, et cetera. And they wanted to compute, volumetrics, okay? Their idea for this little area. So we can come in and we can compute the volume and take a look at that volume just by clicking this button, and it'll tell us the volume of that area. It's pretty cool stuff. And that's one way of using the drone, right? Well, this is a poor man's model. This flight took literally less than 10 minutes, and I got my results today, right? So this is the poor man's model. The rich man's model is what we looked at earlier. But these are some things that I work with, and it's my job to convey my knowledge and some of the do's and don'ts about modeling and mapping. Mapping with the drone is probably one of the most useful features that you use the drone for, because we can then go into that 3D reality type model and do measurements. We can do those volumetrics, et cetera. For the coker plant, the fact that these guys have this, it's a dynamic environment, and they have to take this material and sell it. They put it on railroads. There's a railroad right behind it. You can't see it. And they'll put it on the railroad cars and ship it off and sell it for very, very little money, right? But they still make money on it. But it's a natural byproduct of that refining process. And here at the refinery, so today was mapping. Tomorrow I teach all day about inspections. And so we go through and we talk about, well, what do you want to inspect, right? And so each of these guys, you know, they want to inspect the tank farm, right? So today we went through and did a bunch of pictures on the tank farm. Tomorrow we'll look at the models from that. We can kind of do some inspections from the models. But really for the inspection, we're using the new HT20 camera from that M300. It gives us, I mean, really gives us incredible close-up zoom pictures at a safe distance. So that's the kind of stuff I do. I don't know, Bernard, if I'm taking up too much time here, but
no, you've got another 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
Okay, so I'm involved in, you know, in teaching, and I've gotten myself plugged in with that, and I really enjoy it. I've gotten myself involved, you know, at the Skyline drones. We do work in town with quite a few people, like Houston Metro is one of ours. I believe I have a Houston Metro. They had come to us and asked us to do a millimeter level collect for them. And they wanted a roof at one of their sites. So I'll show you what that looks like. It takes a minute to come up. And this is a little Microsoft Surface. I'm on travel here, so I don't have my main machine with me. But as you'll be able to tell, this is a Phantom 4 Pro. It's about 3,300 pictures it took, but we were able to go, you know, at a reasonable level, and for them to be able to then inspect the rooftop. We were able to go into, I mean, you can zoom in, we can come down to a pretty decent level. It takes a minute to render, okay? And this took on my, I have an Intel i9 9660, two 2080 Ti cards, 128 gigs of RAM. This model took 10 days to run from start to finish. In fact, they didn't want, they said, well, just stop running it. And I said, no, I'm going to let it run. I want to see what this looks like. And, you know, besides the fact that it's kind of an ugly dreary color, it still turned out pretty well. And you can see some pretty amazing detail, even just the fact that it was a Phantom 4 Pro, right? So it's pretty neat. We can, you know, we can run measurements with this. We can look at it from a flattened angle. And again, this is a Surface Pro. If you guys are ever interested in learning, you know, how to map and all of that, it is an art. It is one of those things that you just cannot pick up a book and learn. It's just so much information. It's very interesting, but that's what I do. And, you know, I use drones every day to help, you know, provide solutions for people. That's my job, and I really, really enjoy it. So I hope you guys get a little bit out of this and can see, you know, some of the usefulness that drones can do, not just with pretty pictures for real estate, you know, but there's other things we can use drones for. So with that, I'll stop sharing and pass back to you.
Thank you so much, Karl. Before we move on, I have a small technical issue. I accidentally transferred host status to you. Do you know how to transfer back? I
am. Well, you gave me all sorts of control here.
Yeah,
do you want to be on this meeting? No, I'm kidding. No, I'm teasing. Let's see. It says one participant at a time. Multiple participants can share something. Advanced sharing option. I don't know how to make you.
If you go to click participants, mouse over.
Yep, I'm on there. I see you. I see.
There's a more, and then you should be able to give me permission. Yep. Give me host back.
Make host. Yep, your host back. Okay. There you go. No worries.
Okay. Thank you so much. I apologize for causing a technical issue.
No worries.
Let's see. We have now set up everyone can share screens. So Andrew Ashur, you are next. Go and talk to us about your business, because your business is very, very interesting.
Awesome. Thanks, Bernard. So I'd say in an interesting fashion, I started where I think many of you are today, just interested in drone technology, sitting in a college dorm room, thinking about what I can really do with drone technology. And to give a bit of context on how our company was originally founded, we had no prior drone experience, to be rather transparent. I started my company with two college friends, and we attended a liberal arts college. So we weren't actually engineers by trade. I'd say the one thing that the liberal arts education does is teach you how to learn and learn well. So we thought drones were interesting and wanted to learn everything about them. And really where we began was from a place of humanitarian concern. We saw window washers and pressure washers that were cleaning tall buildings hanging from lifts and ladders and scaffolds. And we were just appalled that no one had found a way to leverage existing technology to make that a safer job. So we wanted to do just that. And we thought drones were the perfect solution for it. They were a nascent yet evolving technology, and you could build drones that could lift a lot of weight. And then all you have to do is figure out, again, this is a very simplistic version of it, how to couple that heavy lift drone with an on-ground cleaning system to effectively clean at heights and ultimately relocate those workers to the ground to clean more safely. So when we first started our company, we were juniors in college at the time, and we tried to take the path of least resistance. What we did at the start was buy one of DJI's industrial drones off the shelf and actually build a bracket around it that would allow us to couple it with an on-ground cleaning system. And that was good in some ways. It allowed us to very quickly prove out that drone cleaning conceptually could work, but the DJI platform had a lot of different issues because it wasn't at all built for the type of work we were asking it to do. It was built to lift heavy cameras and LiDAR sensors, and we were working with variable payloads and high pressure water streams and all of that. So as we were still in college at the time, we just started cleaning different houses and buildings in our local college town, learning as much as we could about the drone cleaning space and how we could more effectively clean with drones. And on this journey, we ended up winning our college's venture fund competition and started to get some interest from local investors and accelerator programs. And I'd say the common theme for many of those conversations were, wow, this is a really cool technology. We love to see what you're doing with drones, and we think this could really fundamentally change the way cleaning is done forever. But this isn't a great company as a side project. So I was in a fortunate position where I ended up graduating a year early to pursue this endeavor and the company full time. And very quickly into that journey, we realized relying on DJI drones was not the way to go. And again, to DJI's credit, they build very high quality consumer and prosumer drones. And most people are most familiar with DJI. They have a really friendly user interface, and that's all great. But industrial drones in many ways are like cars, and they need regular maintenance and support in order for them to keep functioning well. And what we noticed is over time, our DJI drones would start to wear and tear, where you might need to replace a motor, or DJI would force a firmware update and the drone would no longer even take off. And they're very much so a closed loop system. So it was taking months and months and months for their technicians to repair our drones. We got to the point where we had 3 different DJI drones have some different issue, and we had no drones left to actually run our business with. So we realized the only path forward for us was to actually go out and begin building our own drones. So I pretty much locked myself in this room above the garage of the neighbor of one of our investors. And all I did for 3 months was read every single book on robotics I could get my hands on, watch hundreds of hours of drone build videos, and read all these different drone building forums until eventually we emerged 3 months later with a drone that can lift 3 times the amount of payload as DJI's. And we're even able to program it to fly its own autonomous missions to the point where we were showing that not only could the drone fly itself, but it could also clean a building by itself. And we ultimately decided to pursue the traditional startup route. Our company went through Y Combinator, which is a pretty large accelerator program for startups out in San Francisco. Some other companies that have gone through it are like Airbnb and Reddit, and a lot of robotics companies as well, which is what was exciting for us. And coming out of that, we were able to raise a seed round of investment, which was really exciting, which allowed us to really scale our team and further prove out the technology. And ultimately what we settled on as a business was being a technology provider for other companies. So we didn't want to do the services. At the end of the day, we wanted to create the most amount of impact for the world with our technology. And the best way to do that was enabling other companies to use our drones. So what we do as a business is actually lease our drone technology to other service providers, mainly in the cleaning space, and teach the workers that they used to have, say, cleaning buildings, actually learn how to fly our drones. And in the middle of launching our first few cleaning customers, the pandemic set in and shutdowns took effect across North Carolina and many other states that our cleaning companies were operating in. And the common feedback we heard was, hey, we're being absolutely inundated with disinfecting jobs. And one of the biggest challenges right now is trying to disinfect large facilities with regularity because handheld methods are so slow. Is there anything you could do with that? So because we now focus on building this complete drone solution from the hardware to the software, we had a lot of flexibility and a lot of experience combining drones with chemicals for cleaning applications. So in short order, we were able to launch our disinfecting drone and are now working with some exciting customers like the Atlanta Falcons and unfortunately not the University of Houston yet, but we are working with 2 other Texas universities, such as Baylor University and Texas A&M, which has been really exciting. And again, I'm interested for what other questions you guys have, but I think the story I really want to leave with all of you is you can learn a ton about drones. There's a lot of knowledge out there. There are a lot of great open source communities, and it's a very supportive network for the most part. And you don't have to be a brilliant robotics engineer to learn how to start building and programming drones. And in many ways, our company is where we are today and working with these really exciting customers because we just kept our heads down and try to keep building towards this vision of leveraging drone technology to make the world a better place. Because often people think of drones and they think about it as, say, a military technology. And we always, in some ways, like to joke that we're really a part of the Drones for Good movement. So again, I could go into much greater detail, but for fear of being verbose, I'll end it there, and I look forward to any questions you all have.
Thank you so much, Andrew. We are now going to pass the torch on to Nick Massaneda. Nick, do you want to start off? You share your camera or no?
Yeah, you bet. Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for having me, Bernard. And hello to Robbie as well, who I see is on this call. My name is Nick Madincea, and I'm the founder and CEO of Drone Parks Worldwide. At Drone Parks Worldwide, we're actually a local Houston startup. Our mission and our vision is to build indoor drone stadiums where anyone can come and learn how to fly a drone for recreational purposes. So we always tell people, imagine Topgolf, but for drones. In addition to also being the founder and CEO of Drone Parks Worldwide, I'm also a full-time student here at Baylor University, so SICM. I've actually been working in the drone industry now for almost half a decade. It'll be 5 years in February. And in this 5 years, I really learned a lot about this industry. So I really look forward to speaking with you tonight. You know, one of the biggest lessons I've learned is that the drone industry is actually quite interdisciplinary. And in order to succeed, I think you really need to understand 3 things here in the industry. First, you need to understand the politics of this industry, both legislatively and just interpersonally. Second, I think you need to understand the technology of this industry. And third is I think you really need to understand the business side of this industry. Now, over the last 5 years, I've had the incredible privilege of doing a lot of different things. I've done everything from teach a course at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology to being named one of the most influential people in the emerging drone industry by the Houston Chronicle. And earlier this year, I actually was the first human being ever approved to fly a micro racing drone through NASA's International Space Station mock-up at Johnson Space Center, which was quite a privilege. Our drone company actually was housed inside of Lone Star Flight Museum on Ellington Field. And so I'm actually going to throw up a quick video here if Bernard doesn't mind. Bernard, do you mind?
You should have access to do so.
Great. Just a quick video showing you guys kind of what we do. Basically, our goal and our mission as a company is to give access to drone technology to anybody who wants it, including kids and families. So I'm going to play a quick video of something we used to do a lot here at the museum, which is drone ride-alongs, and you guys can kind of get a sense for that. It's only about a minute long, and hopefully the sound will cooperate with us here.
Is this the one where I'm in it?
This is us flying through NASA's lunar rover. So yeah, that shows you a little bit about what we do. Now, before I go ahead and conclude my portion of my introduction, I would just give you some quick advice by saying, really to understand this industry, like I said, you need to understand those three things: politics, technology, and business. And I think the best advice I would really give anybody is understand what you're getting yourself into. I love the drone industry, and it's been an absolute pleasure to work in this industry for the last 5 years. But what I would say is that this is the absolute wild west of technology. I view myself and the other two presenters here today as sort of kind of the prospectors, if you would, on the next frontier. This is uncharted territory, not only for us as a nation, not only for us as a technology, but really for us as a species. There's never been the opportunity to democratize access to airspace like this before. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and conclude my portion of the introduction, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
Thank you so much, Nick. Is it possible for you to put the link of the video in the chat, as a lot of students complained that it was kind of laggy?
Oh yes, I can absolutely do that.
Okay. I believe it is now time for us to open the floor to a couple of questions. While students are typing the questions in the chat, so for students and other people who have attended this event, if you have a question, feel free to start asking in the chat now. We've got a couple of starter questions that we'd like to go ahead and get started with. Shazi, do you want to ask the first question?
Yes, I will do that. 1 second. Right. So one of the things that we talked about before, having this conference was, how are all of you guys able to raise the capital to start your businesses? Yeah, that was one of the main questions that we had.
How did you raise the cap for all of you guys? How did you raise the capital to start your businesses? Was it just that you started and then suddenly got access to the funds, or did you have to go through a startup accelerator program, or is it still challenging to raise money for your business?
Yeah, I can go ahead and dive in on that question to start. So I'd say fundraising for startups is very difficult in many different ways, and it's a very time-consuming and in ways life-consuming process. I'm actually in the middle of trying to raise our Series A right now, and it's exciting in some ways, but really my advice to most entrepreneurs is try to take your company as far as you can and prove out as much as possible before you consider taking a single investment dollar. Just because once you take that investment dollar, one, you start to dilute yourself and lose equity in your own company. But two, the pressure and dynamic of the overall company changes, because you really need to ask yourself, like, what kind of company am I trying to build? If you want to build a lifestyle business where you can make a happy income and really enjoy what you do for a living, and you don't need to take a single dollar of investment capital, do it. 100% of the time. If you're, on the other hand, trying to build an incredibly sophisticated startup company that's going to leverage machine learning and computer vision for the world's greatest drones that have conditional automation, now that's a pretty capital intensive thing. So trying to figure out how to fundraise is important. And where we started was just, using all of our jobs we'd been working at the time in college. We saved up all our money, went out and bought this drone, did our proof of concept, showed we could actually build a business around our core idea, and tried to take it as far as possible with our own savings and capital. And then once we got to the point where we're like, all right, if our business is going to continue to grow, we really do need to take outside capital. That's when we began fundraising. And for our first round of capital, we were very fortunate that there's a really active startup community in the Charlotte area, especially surrounding our college. So most of our early angel investors were, just local people who had run startup companies and did angel investing professionally. And then we were able to advance the company a little bit, get into Y Combinator, which was an accelerator program. And that program gives you a really great platform to go out and raise a more substantial seed round of capital. And that's what we've done most recently. So hopefully that helps a bit.
So how exactly did you get into Y Combinator? Because it's a pretty tough startup accelerator to get into. How did you get into that?
So truthfully, we didn't get in the first time we applied, and that's typically the case with many companies. I know in the batch we ultimately did get into, which was the second time we applied, I think there were 15,000 total applicants, and they took 200. So we were thrilled to get in there. But I think really what set us apart was our application. One of the questions they ask in the application is, what have you accomplished since the last time you applied? And in the 6 months since we had last applied, we'd gone out and we built our own drone. It had 3 times the payload of a leading competitor. We were able to automate it, and we actually included a video of our drone flying itself and cleaning for itself in that application. So it was a pretty powerful demonstration of the technology. And what Y Combinator cares about are the billion-dollar ideas. Like if you have a great idea that could one day be worth $10 million, that's awesome. And that's something everyone should be really, really proud of. But in the startup world, unless you have a story of how you could one day be worth $1 billion+ dollars, most of the larger investors won't be as interested like Y Combinator.
That seems to be I'm glad you guys got it. That seems to be very, very interesting. We have 2 questions in the chat, both of them for Karl. We're going to start with Carson. Carson asked the program, what specific program are you guys using? Is it a DJI mapping program, or does it depend on the drone, or is it a one-stop shop software?
Man, that's a great question, because like I believe it was Andrew, if I get your name wrong, I apologize, but as Andrew was saying, we have an industry that's split. DJI on one hand is the market leader. It's undeniable. There's nothing you can do about it for now. But I'm not anti DJI, because where I hang my hat on a lot of things. But we're working with other drones, right? We're working with Free Fly. We have an Alta X, and it's a 4-place drone. It's very expensive. Go out of DJI, we go to there. Now, if we're using Alta X, we're also working with another group that helps work with Q ground control. So in that case, we're changing a lot of our auto flight software to use Q ground control. Right now, we do all of our auto flights and missions using the DJI M600 with that dual Sony A7R4 platform. We use UGCS for our auto flight. We have looked at others like Lychee, and if we're doing just a regular 2D mapping or whatever, we'll most likely, for most of the times, I'll use something like Ground Station Pro. But there is all sorts of things. Right now, for example, with Phillips 66, with their mapping, they are using the site scan program. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. It's a 3DR. They've gotten with Esri and with the ArcGIS program that they have. And so that's what we're teaching for the Field 66 people. So there is and then of course you have the drone deploy. Okay, drone deploy is yet another, I call it the poor man's mapping, system, if you will. And there's just a combination. So there's a software we fly the drone with that can automate the drone. And then we take those images and we can enter them into whatever cloud processing area we want to, or in my case at my house, the thing that's the best that I found is Bentley. Bentley has context capture, and they're doing some incredible, they have a tool called Open Tower. They are killing it, and they look professional. Their mesh models are the best in the world. Haven't seen anything better. So, man, it just depends really on your organization. But the drones, like Andrew said, they're just amazing. And whether you're using, now, Andrew, are you guys using a Pixhawk for your controller, or what are you guys using?
Yes, we're using a Pixhawk.
So that's a great controller. I'm telling you right now, smart choice. Kudos to Andrew for pulling that plug. That's amazing to have that capability. And UGCS, I believe, runs with the Pixhawk. What are you using for your automated flight, Andrew?
We use Q Ground Control as our preferred ground station.
Nice.
Our student organization actually does workshops related to Q Ground Control and to Mission Planner, but we also all use Pixhawks. And Dr. Becker, who is the professor, academic professor advisor, actually teaches Pixhawks to his grad students. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Nice.
I was going to say, for all those drone enthusiasts out there, if you're trying to learn, Arducopter and PX4 both have really active open source communities with a ton of documentation on how to build and program your own drones. If you're just trying to learn quickly, Arducopter is a little bit more user-friendly. I'll say PX4 is a much more powerful firmware for automation and also gives you better business claims on intellectual property. So if you're interested in starting a business, I'd probably recommend developing on PX4 firmware. But if you want to quickly get a cool drone up and flying, Arducopter is probably your best option.
You guys are actually running into one of the questions that I was about to ask next. Before Brian and Derek asked their question, I wanted to ask this. There are a lot of different ways to get into unmanned vehicles, a lot of different platforms, a lot of different systems. We've mentioned FPV, we've mentioned Pixhawk, we've mentioned a bunch of other DJI's proprietary systems. What do you recommend that students use to get into the industry? And what do you recommend that students pick up and learn first? And this is open to anyone. I think Nick wants to answer.
Yeah, you bet. I love answering this question. So the absolute best drone that you can start with is called a Cyma X5C. And these things are literally indestructible. I've seen a racing pilot, Nurk actually, he literally took one and ran it under a water fountain and it continued flying afterwards. So you cannot kill these drones. They're $45 on Amazon. They also have a negative throttle setting. So unlike a DJI, it does not come back to neutral. So it's actually really great to start and to begin. It's kind of like starting with a stick shift car and then going to automatic. So I really highly suggest that. And again, I'll drop that in the chat. That's called a Cyma, S-Y-M-A X5C, and it's $45 on Amazon. And I think that's the absolute best drone you can start with.
What about getting into more industry heavy stuff? What do you recommend people get out to? This is up to everyone again.
I'd probably ask what your main intentions are. So if you just want to learn how to fly a drone, I likely would go the DJI route. They're user-friendly. Again, their consumer and prosumer models are amazing. And you can go out and buy a Mavic that's got great resolution, that's pretty easy to control. And again, if you're just like wanting to do like basic pictures and videos and learn how to fly and interact with the drone, that's a great place. But if you're more interested in the engineering side of things, I truthfully would look for different types of kits where you could actually build your own drone, and they pretty much give you all the hardware you need. But then you could say put a Pixhawk controller on top of it and play around with different parameters and onboard sensors you could integrate. So it really it comes down to what do you want to do? Do you want to be a service provider and quickly learn how to get into that industry? Because that's one answer. But if you're just trying to learn how to build cool drones, that's probably another answer. I'm sure Karl's got some good thoughts on that as well.
Well, I wish I had good answers for you, because I can, if I had my choice, if I had to go and to work with things like, for example, a while back I had bought a solo drone. I don't know if you guys remember that drone. That was a couple years ago.
There's a throwback for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's not that long ago, but maybe it is. I don't know. Probably 5 or 6 years ago. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed learning Mission Planner. I enjoyed building my own drone with a little Pixhawk controller and getting my hands wet with it. I really, really like that. Right. So to me. That's where I want to be. I want to be, being able to do things with the drone that and having kind of be able to open up the hood of the car, so to speak, and tinker with it. And that's really what I felt like I could do with the Pixhawk controller. Unfortunately, that's just something I had to kind of give way to in order to fulfill the needs that I had for my clients. Right. I mean, they wanted a drone that's going to fly. They want it to fly now. They want it to do and be able to collect data and to collect good data. And I needed a drone that could be consistent. And I mean, I remember when I first started doing this, 6.5 years ago, I kind of got in on the tail end of that first initial push with drones. And I just remember, well, hey, it's not just good enough to clap my hands that my drone flew. I mean, that's kind of what I was doing. I was like, oh my God, it flew for 5 minutes. Look at that, guys, before it crashed. And that's still how I fly my racing drones. The racing drones, I'm terrible, but I have fun with them, right? And I get to tinker, I get into beta flight and do stuff with them and mess around with them. But man, when you're out there in a professional business environment, for example, I've been teaching Southern Cal Edison, right? SoCal Edison's a big provider in California for all their electrical needs. I've taught about 100 of those guys over the last, since COVID started, sneaking in and out whenever I could. But the thing is, they want Parrot drones. That's what they want. And so we have to put together a drone program for them using that Parrot and Anafi thermal. So I kind of like switching over and looking at some of these new opportunities away from DJI. But at the end of the day, when we're here at Phillips 66, I mean, they're paying that $22,000 for that brand new industry level drone, that M300. It's got an IP45 rating. I mean, it can basically take a nozzle, a pressure washer, not a full pressure washer, but a pretty good nozzle of pressure full of water and can handle it. It's pretty resilient. It's got an amazing camera system on it and lots of options. So, it gets down to it, I guess, like someone, I think it was Andrew first mentioned, it's whatever your client or wherever you want to put your business, whatever direction you go is going to dictate what drone application you use. I'm sorry if that's long-winded.
That's pretty good. We actually have another question for you. On the render that took 10 minutes to calculate the volume that you were talking about during your presentation, no, sorry, Kat. How much did that cost the client? How much did the job cost you? And how much would you recommend? And bear in mind, you can give rough numbers. You don't have to give the exact numbers you used because
I have no problem. I have no problem. When I'm out here teaching these guys, I couldn't tell you what Dart Drones, which is the group I work for, I can't tell you what they charge the client for a day of my time, but I could make anywhere from $400 to $1,000 a day, depending on what I'm doing and what environment I'm in, and that's good enough for me. As far as my training and my time, I know I could probably make more, but Dart is great because they fill up my calendar. All my kids are grown. My son, who's at the U of H there, he's 24. He's the last one in my house. So I'm kind of the older guy here. And for me, the weekends, I get to go do all these trainings and all over the country. I really enjoy it. So may not be making, a whole lot of money, but if I came back after a weekend and I had $1,400 in my pocket, I think that's pretty good, for training. And that's possible doing that. If I'm charging a client and I'm getting out there, and if I'm working directly for example, Houston Fuel Oil Terminal Company, they're down there at the Ship Channel. that's something that we can charge, $1,500 a day to $3,000 a day, depending on do we need, what kind of work we're doing, et cetera. What are our deliverables? It just depends. For a flight like that, really, it's like I said, it's a 10-minute flight. It's part of my training. So there wasn't a real cost to the client. Just so you understand my costs, for that computer I have at my office, for the programs for context capture, it's $1,400 for every 3 months. So you got to figure in that. Well, yeah, big bucks. And then you got to my business insurance. I'm sure the other guys can talk about their business insurance. I mean, that's no joke. It cost me probably $8,000 a year just for my liability. I have a couple of drones that are covered because they're more expensive. I have them covered with their hull. And then I have the liability and the, errors and omissions and all of the other kind of insurance for the business, which is covered elsewhere. So, I mean, by the time before I fly in a month, I've got about $2,200 of expenses easily. I mean, and I haven't even, I have a nice little, Bernard, I think you met me right out there and you saw that van that I had. I mean, that's another $600 a month. You got to be making some money to sustain all the equipment. Andrew mentioned that these guys break, they change. You buy a drone from DJI. These guys bought a Z30 camera, $8,000, $8,500. And my buddy was running a shop. You might have heard of him, but he had to close down. He was out off of in Baytown, and he sold 2 clients, 2 different Z30s. The next week, DJI lowered the cost to like $4,000. And the clients were mad at him. And he's like, man, I can't do anything about it. DJI controls the price. When you buy a drone from DJI, count it half its worth the second you buy it. So you got a lot of investment, and it's very hard to get your money back out of it. They devalue very quickly. And then they'll do something like, one of the things with my business, I think is the most important thing for you guys to realize is, you know what my biggest cost is in drones? It's my batteries. My batteries cost at least 2.5 times the cost of my drone, at least. It's amazing. And there's little things like that get you, and they're consumable, right? So I don't know if that answered your question.
That answers it pretty well. We've got another question from Derek, who is asking a question for everyone. What are some beginner beginner drone businesses that you recommend doing, kind of like real estate or photography and roof inspections? As a starter, is there a recommendation to try some of this first before moving into developing higher technologies, or do you recommend just starting straight out and going straight for what you want to develop?
I'll take sort of the first part of that question, hand that off to Andrew or Karl, who can answer it better than I can on the back end. I would highly caution somebody against starting a small drone service company. Over the last 5 years, we've seen a lot of consolidation with a lot of these small DSPs, drone service providers, and it's ultimately been a race to the bottom in terms of pricing. In addition to that, we've seen a lot of challenges with people facing competitors who are honestly not licensed and not regulated. And that's really unfortunate because it's really difficult for a pilot who's licensed and taking themselves quite seriously to compete against someone who's not and can undercut them. And that's something we've seen a lot with AUVSI, which is certainly another piece of advice I give to everybody, which is go join AUVSI, the Association for Unmanned Vehicle Systems International. They're a great organization, the largest trade organization for unmanned systems. So definitely that's the first part of that, I would say.
Andrew, do you want to take the second half?
Yeah. So again, I'm so biased by my own experiences. But truthfully, if you have a vision for something you want to build and you have the means to go ahead and build it and you're excited about it and you have the passion, do it. You're young. This is the best time in your life to take a risk. And again, when I decided to graduate a year early, I played baseball in college, and like baseball was everything to me. And I actually thought I was hopefully going to one day play professionally. So kind of leaving all that behind to start this company, which at the time had very little traction, was a really, really risky decision. But I'm so glad I did it because the lessons I learned, the connections I've made, the company could fail tomorrow. And I've just learned so much and grown a tremendous amount as a person that I would make that same decision over and over again. And as you age, your commitments in life will get more and more serious, where you may get married and have a family and have a mortgage. And when you're young and fresh out of college, that's usually when you have the least amount of commitments and often the most amount of opportunities. So if there's something you're excited about and you want to go build it, go build it. And that's not saying like just be reckless and don't have a plan, because that's not at all the message I want to communicate. But taking risks can pay off, especially when they're calculated risks and you have a good plan.
We actually have a question for you following up from that. That's kind of a little bit more technical side. So how do you guys plan an autonomous flight inside of a stadium? We're pretty sure that you can't use GPS and there's a lot of other stuff. Do you guys use some other system? Is it manually flown? How does that work?
Yeah, so I'll say on the autonomy piece, that was in relation more to our exterior cleaning drones. But even still, with our applications, you're either operating within close proximity to a building or inside of a building where those are GPS restricted or denied environments. So we actually can't use GPS based positioning and had to develop a non GPS based flight mode. And I'd say, even more importantly, learn how to program the drone with sensors that won't be biased in the face of significant electromagnetic interference. Because even basic sensors like compasses, which are typically inherent on each and every drone you'll ever fly, if you fly with compasses indoors and there's a lot of magnetic interference, your drone is just going to act incredibly erratically. So it's leveraging a lot of other different sensors that can operate in these environments, whether it's sonar, computer vision is a great one. So our favorite type of positioning is actually using visual inertial odometry, where the camera can detect features in its environment and the position of the drone in relation to those features.
Is that using a stereo cam, or is it using something closer to what the Skydio autonomy engine, out of curiosity?
It's more a stereo camera, and stereo cameras also open up depth perception opportunities where you could then generate a point cloud, which will help a lot for path planning and autonomous missions.
That's pretty cool. We have a question for everyone, and anyone who's willing to take it, feel free. From Maria, she asks, where do you see the drone industry going in the next 3 to 5 years, or within the next year? Nick kind of started that question. I think he answered.
Yeah, I mean, this is a wonderful question. This is kind of the $1 million question, right? I think that it's good to sort of look at this through the frame of 3 big questions, right? And the first one is, what is DJI's market share going to be, and how DJI centric is the drone industry going to be? The second big question in my mind is, how autonomous is the drone industry going to be? And in my mind, the third big question is, ultimately, what is legislation going to enable? So I think if we look at all 3 of those questions, first, I think that the drone industry may become less and less DJI centric as people begin to chip away at their market share. Right now, I believe DJI has 76% of the drone market across all price points. So we may see that steadily decline here, or we may not. I have no idea, to be honest. Next is I think we're going to see increasing autonomy across the board. And then third is I think we're going to see more and more favorable regulation begin to get passed. However, it will become more expensive to become a player here in the drone industry.
On that note, I did have a question that I have pre-prepared that kind of does follow along with that. Does anyone else want to take a crack at the question first before I ask that question, or no? Karl or Andrew?
I think Nick kind of hit it on the nail on the head. One of the things that I have seen DJI do is not unlike what GoPro did a while back. And I mean, GoPro 2, GoPro 3, Hero 4, as we start getting more, they started closing up the back end of their device. They started saying, hey, all you developers that helped us with our, software, thank you, but we got it now, right? And I'm seeing DJI do that with their enterprise level drones. They're going to their own controllers, their smart controllers. They're starting to shut out third-party vendors, and it's starting to kind of be like where they're showing us the hand. Hey, I got you. And I think that will be to the advantage of other drone manufacturers where they start really upsetting the clientele. I mean, I love my third-party apps. That's the only way the DJI Go app, that's what comes normally with the program. That's great. It gives you basic capability, but I can't do what I have to do quickly. And that was one of the biggest things with Mission Planner versus DJI Ground Station Pro. I mean, I sat there and went out, and I want to support the Mission Planner community. I love it. But the apps just, this is going back 4 or 5 years ago. The apps just were not quick. I could not quickly generate a mapping mission where I can, like today, I can spin up that mapping mission very fast. That's using, my third-party software. Now, who knows? We'll see what happens with DJI. I hope they get their butts kicked myself, personally. Although that means I'm going to have to adapt. Like Nick said, it's become a lot more expensive when we get, American-made drones instead of these Chinese or other. So, interesting. And I kind of agree with Nick. I liked his answer.
Andrew, as a drone maker, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I'll be really interested to see how things evolve over these next several years. Speaking holistically about the drone industry, I'm excited for what it looks like in 5 years, just in terms of the use cases, because I'm sure there are things that haven't even been conceptualized yet that drones will be doing in 5 years. But on the topic of DJI is this amazing company where they just almost anticipate market needs. And what I think they did oh so well was anticipate that making a very simple and easy to use interface in ways kind of like Apple did with the iPhone. They were able to really lock up a majority of the market, but now they've had a lot of data privacy issues, and being made in America has been an increasing interest for many companies, and like the Department of the Interior grounded all of its DJI drones and so on. I'll be interested to see how it evolves, because in my opinion, the market is just clamoring for United States drone manufacturers. And to date, no one has really stepped up and said, hey, we want to compete with DJI. You've got some companies that are building really intelligent drones like Autel or different more drone delivery companies like Madincea, but no one's saying we want to get into the kind of high volume, low margin drone manufacturer market with DJI. And I do think one will emerge over the next several years, but no one's really close to DJI at this point.
You're not gonna. Are you interested in talking about 3DR and their attempt, or Skydio and their current attempts, or Parrot? Have you looked at those?
So I can't speak too much to those, because again, where we play with drones is in the industrial market, that in my opinion is the most neglected space for drones. These consumer and prosumer drones, like the smaller drone applications, it is such a crowded market.
Oh yeah.
If you look at just say software companies for drones, everyone's building the next greatest photogrammetry platform. It's a really competitive and crowded space. Granted, it's one of the most popular use cases right now for drones. But at the same time, there are a lot of neglected fields like these industrial applications where we like to operate that no one's really focused on. And that's ultimately where we found the biggest flaw with DJI and shortcoming is, for every probably 2,000 like Mavics they would put out one industrial drone. So they just didn't even have the bandwidth to really support it. So not the greatest answer to those other smaller drone manufacturers, not in terms of their company size, but the actual drones themselves. I do think they're building impressive technology, but they have a long way to go until there is significant pain in DJI side.
On that note, because we've brought it up almost, do you want to answer something, Karl?
Yeah, I can make a quick comment on Parrot and Solo, Bernard, if you'd like. So I think the problem, ultimately the question is like, who could be the alternative to DJI, right? And the answer is nobody right now. Right now, there's not. 3DR took a really good stab at it, a very respectable stab at it, in the mid 2010s. But ultimately, they just didn't have a margin. They didn't have the margins. They were paying $4 for a motor when DJI was paying 52 cents. Parrot's doing a great job. However, again, they just don't have the margins for it, and they're losing money. I believe about 6 months ago, Parrot laid off a lot of their staff, which is really unfortunate. In Skydio, they can't keep them on shelves right now. They are selling like hotcakes. They have I believe it's up to 13 or 14 month backlog now. So they just don't have the supply chain like DJI does.
On that note, because we've brought it up a couple of times, the American Securities Drone Act of 2019 was passed in Congress recently, and it passed to the Senate and had received the president's approval, regardless of the opinions of the president. It was recently enforced to the point where the Department of the Interior and the Department of Defense have banned DJI and other Chinese companies from using drones for government activities. Do you think that legislation like this is a good thing or a bad thing? What do you think the future of this is?
I'll do my best to answer that. I'm not sure there is a right answer in this, and to have a qualitative like good or bad assessment, I'm not sure if I can give that. I do think there's value in having more trusted sources for drone operations, especially when security matters. But for like the average, oh goodness, like drone service provider that's out there, like inspecting roofs for insurance claims or whatever it happens to be, if DJI is leveraging that data for their own internal purposes, that's not the biggest concern. But if you have some higher security drone uses, especially within the government or the military, that's where I do think having legislation that is more favorable for United States manufacturers to break in, I'm very supportive of that, because I do think a United States company is going to need a little bit of help to step up to the plate and compete with DJI. And at the end of the day, with the number of data privacy concerns and claims they've had, if I were in the military or a high-ranking official within the government, I would be pretty wary of DJI collectively.
The Securities Drone Act actually was passed for all departments of government. So it's not just military, it's the post office, it's everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So even without the military consideration, is that still true? Still relevant?
I think it is, especially if you look at, say, infrastructure in ways DJI, a foreign-based company, would be gaining access and insights to potential weaknesses within the country.
Can I add to that real quick? While you just said that, you just triggered me.
Mm-hmm.
Is that all right if I interrupt you?
Of course, that was the end of my thought.
So we were hired to come down to do some mapping for the nuclear facility in Palacios, Texas, which is just down the coast there. And one of the things that bothered me, now I was in the Marines early in my life, spent 4 years in the Marine Corps, so certainly can understand from a military perspective. But what really bugged me was getting authorization to fly, right? And they had blocked out where the reactors are. I really gritted my teeth, because when I requested permission to fly, DJI said, well, we need a rep from that facility. So I had to get our point of contact to go up his chain to get a letter of permission to give to the Chinese, which bothered me, right? Because now the Chinese know there's this person named XYZ who has authority at this place. Now it's just a matter of let's kind of take it further, right? And even though we were using a Chinese drone, it was our own camera system, which is why they didn't have an issue with us. But we were looking for settling, for the reactors, and that was a big problem. They don't want it to settle. We know the soil here in Texas is pretty bad, so that bothered me. And it also bothers me, like today, we were out there, we're on the approach end of the runway for Ponca City, Oklahoma. We're at a refinery. There's stacks that are 300 plus feet in the sky. We're limited by the Chinese. I have to go through all these hoops to get all these permissions, all these things to turn on my drone, to get access, delaying me. And I'll tell you right now, as soon as I can get rid of that, I'll be happy. With my Parrot, I don't have to ask anybody. I better know what I'm doing, right? Because I have my pilot's license, but I better know what airspace I'm in, and I better know if I can fly and how high. I better understand the UAS facility maps. A lot of stuff I have to know in order to do my job. But to me, I like the government trying to be proactive. I do like that. because I've seen things that just don't sit well with me. But that's me personally. You may or may not agree. And I'm all for competition, but you know, that's where I stand. I will tell you this: if you use the simulator in DJI, you are opening every bit of what you have to the Chinese. We did studies on that. We found that one little hook in their whole system gave them access to everything on whatever device you had. It was a serious intelligence problem. So it may not be the drone. It may be one of their apps, right, that does that. We proved it, and we spent a lot of money. And we work with SBA. I sit on the National Association for Tower Erectors Committee for Drones, and that was one of the things we did. We pooled money together. We spent $5 million, and we found, hey, they are stealing information, not through the drone, but through, once you sign up and you start using their simulator, if you do use it, they're taking every bit of your data. So stuff like that doesn't sit well with me. So it wouldn't bother me in the least, but we have to have something that is equally as good as DJI. Yeah.
We have a question from Kelly, who is from the CEO Club. Kelly asks, what are some possibilities for future drone use in the renewable energy industry? We've talked a lot about nuclear. We've talked a lot about coal and natural gas plants. What do you guys see in the renewable energies?
Yeah, I'll take a quick shot at this one. So actually here in North Texas, there's actually a huge industry with drones being used to inspect wind turbines, particularly on the blades and on the turbine itself. So that's one use case that's happening right here in Texas.
Karl, have you ever done those inspections out of curiosity, or do you know anyone who has?
Yeah, we've been up to the Canadian area, just up in the Borger, North Texas region. We've done a couple of turbine and blade inspections. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not an easy environment. First of all, why do you think there's wind turbines there? Because there's wind, right? So it can be kind of a hairy thing. And you know, the actual where these things mount, and these three blades mount onto the cam, that sits at 80 meters in altitude. And we know that wind on the surface is one thing, but when we go up, 100 meters or higher, the wind it can double easily. And man, it's hard. You're sitting there 55 miles an hour, and man, I shouldn't be there, And so it's a very, very difficult environment for inspections. And there's a lot of concern about drones hitting and nicking the blade. That's one of the biggest concerns they have. And I've sat in on a couple of meetings with these groups, and I just, I think, man, it's a tough environment. I don't know if I'd want that job, and going out there and spending a week, it's an interesting environment. And if you guys are ever interested in some pictures and seeing some of the things we try to do, one of the biggest things is they wanted us to map these big structures. And the problem is with the wind, they move, and it's not good for photogrammetry. It's very, very difficult. And you have to put the brake, not only obviously on the blades, because you don't want the blade spinning, but then you have a brake that you have to put on it so that it doesn't weather vane, right? So it doesn't twist into the wind. And even though you do that, the very tips of these blades, they move. And when we try to do pattern matching and so forth, it can be really tough. And I just don't know. There's better pilots than me probably can handle it. It's a tough environment.
Andrew, do you or anyone that you're aware of in your startup accelerator have done inspections for solar or wind? Or is that something you're just learning about?
So I can't say I or any connections have done inspections in that space. I will say we did some preliminary research on the actual cleaning of solar panels and whether or not drones would be a good option. I can say for large solar farms, it would be pretty tough to make an argument that drones are the best methods. They have some pretty impressive platforms already for cleaning those that are very, very efficient. But I do think there are, say, isolated cases where a drone would be the best method for cleaning a solar panel, like solar panels that are located on the top of a roof that may be hard to access.
That seems to be pretty cool. I hope to see technology from that in the future. Shazi, do you want to ask one of our pre-questions?
Yeah, so a question that I had more from like a business standpoint was, how has the coronavirus affected your operations? If it's made, business go up or down, and what you guys might have done to combat it, manufacturing wise, or just, like Nick was.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to jump in on that one because in many ways, our traditional business was completely upended because of the pandemic. We actually had a friend test positive for the virus as one of the first few hundred cases in the United States. And this was before shutdowns had even taken effect, or we really fully understood the extent of what this virus would turn into. And we had to go into a 14-day quarantine where we weren't allowed to go to the office. And we were just kind of stuck at home thinking about what would come next for Lucid. And then in the middle of this, we had just launched customers for the cleaning drone. We're about to launch several more. And people started backing out as North Carolina shut down as a state. And all of a sudden, it was like states all over the country were shutting down, and people were no longer going to be on university campuses or going to their office buildings. So the need to clean them wasn't as apparent. And it was during that time that many of these companies were like, hey, well, we're not cleaning, but we're getting a ton of work for disinfecting. So what could you do there? And in ways, it was a Hail Mary pass for our company. We're like, well, we need to find a way to continue making money and leveraging our technology to provide value today. And hopefully cleaning will come back, which thankfully it has. But we were at a point where we just went back to the drawing board and said, how can we find a way to provide value in the middle of the pandemic? And luckily it worked out for us.
So out of curiosity, how did you guys land your contract with the Mercedes-Benz Stadium? Because that sort of falls on the same.
Funny enough, through the cleaning drone, we'd actually performed a demo for Mercedes-Benz Stadium with our cleaning drone back in January. And that's how we originally built the relationship. So when we had our disinfecting drone up and running, we were touring up and down the Southeast, a bunch of different stadiums and universities. And we just reached out to Mercedes-Benz Stadium. We're like, hey, we're going to be in Georgia for a demo. We'd love to swing by and give you a demo as well. And fortunately, that ended up going well.
That's pretty cool. We have a question from Carson again, directed at Nick. Nick, Carson is an FPV pilot from our organization, University Drone Pilots, and he's very excited to see the idea and the concept of building a drone park. How far along are you along with that? What are the legal steps to acquiring that in case anyone else was interested in doing that? And how would that system work?
Yeah, well, this is a great question. And speaking of sort of COVID and how it's upended our industry, to be honest, we've been very set back by COVID. Last year we had the fortune of breaking even, and this year we were on track to turn a pretty good profit, unfortunately, until March happened, in which case we had to close our doors. It's been very tough on us. In terms of the legal steps to acquiring a destination, as a company, we are focused exclusively on indoor drone flight. And for that reason, when we go indoors, we're in what's classified as non-navigable airspace, which is airspace that the FAA has the authority to enforce laws. However, they choose not to, because this is airspace that is not navigable by a manned aircraft, i.e. a helicopter or an aircraft. For us, there's really no steps in acquiring a destination outside of a regular real estate transaction. In terms of how Carson can get involved, I'd love to give Carson my email, which I'll message him here, and we can go from there.
Awesome. We have a question that was pre-stored that Andrew kind of brought up in the middle of his presentation. The public image for unmanned aerial vehicles for the last 20 to 30 years has mostly been military. Has that affected your business at all from the perspective that people see? And do you think your business is changing that? Or do you think that it's going to be a part of the drone business for a while?
Yeah, well, I've got a pretty funny story here. So back in 2016, when my co-founder and I started Drone Parks Worldwide, we would tell people, oh yeah, we own a drone company. And people would look at us and say, oh, so you guys are in the Air Force. And then Earlier this year, I had the privilege of touring the 147th Attack Squadron on Ellington Field, which flies the MQ-9 Reaper, which is a big, 55-foot wingspan military drone. And I was talking to one of their NCOs, and he said, yeah, I tell people I fly a drone, and they ask me how I fit all those missiles on something I buy from Best Buy. So it's quite interesting to see the transformation in image here in the drone industry.
Andrew?
So on the topic of, I guess, drone perception, I honestly don't get too much feedback anymore about people being as fearful of them. And again, that's a little bit surprising because the space we operate in is typically introducing people that have never flown drones before or interacted with them. I will say, like, I know holistically the drone market is typically trying to push this drones for good movement and diversify away from how drones were originally used, which was more of a military application. But again, just on a day-to-day basis, the people I interact with, I would say if there's any hesitation to adopting drones, it's not because of what they've been used for in the past. It's just that people think these are such complicated pieces of equipment that they personally won't be able to figure out how to use them if they're middle-aged and have never been exposed to the technology before.
Karl, do you want to reply to that?
Well, I see people relaxing a little bit. I don't, I'm out with the community quite a bit. I see more interest, and let's keep it nice about the middle-aged standard. I resemble that remark. But no, really, in all reality, so as a trainer, as somebody who teaches drones to somebody who's brand new, I see a lot of interest. I see a lot of people who are not quite sure. They want to come out and understand about the drone, and so we take them through a day of training. And I'm getting all types. I've had an 84-year-old man as my oldest, and I've had a 13-year-old young man as my youngest. So it all just depends on the I think what what they're seeing on TV or what they're seeing on social media, and it's one of the biggest things. So I work in Houston with Lance Little. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the FAA FAST program, the FAA safety team. I'm very busy, so I was trying to get more involved this year, but working with Lance, it's policing ourselves. Somebody had mentioned earlier about people who don't have a license who are out there, and it's very frustrating. They're able to go out and make money, and they don't have a license, or they're taking the work, whatever. But man, I tell you, the FAA doesn't have the support. But anyway, getting back to your question, I think the community as a whole is more accepting, and I don't think they're as fearful. And I think they do understand some of the technology at a, like they're not as fearful. When I first started going out there, I was doing tons of roof inspections around Hurricane Harvey. I did over 1,000 roof inspections between Corpus and Houston, and that's a lot of roofs, right? I mean, that's a lot, and it's a lot of money too. So it's really good. But the thing is I see a different perception amongst the community. I see a change, to where they're not as belligerent, not as scared as they were before. Now they understand. I think that there's this technology. They may not know it or really get it, but they respect it to more than they did 6 years ago.
We have a great question from Kelly that I think I'm going to let Nick go first because he's going to have the most experience on this, but it's open to everyone. What are some great examples of some great female accomplishments in the drone industry, or some great female leaders?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'm most proud of at Drone Parks is that my co-founder was named a woman to watch in the drone industry in 2018. Another great person I would tell Kelly about is a local woman named Diane Gibbons. Now, Diane not only served our country as a F-15 pilot, but she also is an active member here in the drone industry here in Houston and nationally. And she's even met with President Trump about drone technology. So she's quite a big shot, and she's here locally in Texas. So she's another person I would definitely Google, and her name is Diane Gibbons. I can definitely drop that in the chat.
Anyone else want to take a crack at that?
Yeah, my CEO at Dart Drones is female. She's a youngster, 32, and she was voted the top 25 up and coming lady in the business. So
Wow.
done a lot. Yeah, she's really good. There's another lady. Somebody had mentioned AUVSI, the Association for Unmanned Vehicle Systems International. That is the biggest consortium of unmanned aerial vehicles. It's a really great group. You should become a member of AUVSI. They have a program called the Trusted Operator Program, and it was developed by Tracy Lamb, who is a very prestigious female in the industry. So females are making a huge difference. Huh?
Tracy is great. Yeah, you're totally right about that, Carl.
Yeah, really sharp. I've been in a lot of meetings with her, but outstanding. And all fairness, we need more females in our industry. It's dominated by males, and we stink, so we need females.
Amen to that. And I guess not to single out, like, say, a specific individual, but one of the organizations I admire the most is actually Women in Drones. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar, but it's more or less a network of women who are like advisors and ambassadors and trying to encourage more female participation in the drone space. And you can post jobs on this platform, and it's just this really great community to try to spark more interest and engagement for females in the drone industry. So if you're not familiar with them, I would definitely check them out and become a part of that community.
We actually reached out to them to hold a joint meeting with them similar to this that will be happening in spring. So hopefully when we hear back from them, we'll hopefully have more information on that.
That's
But
very
they're great.
exciting.
Yeah. We have one of the pre-prepared questions. A lot of flack has been going on the internet. This is probably going to start getting into the angry sides, but a lot of flack has been going on the internet concerning the new remote identification law. Do you guys have any opinion on that matter? And do you think it'll help or hurt your business, or do you think your business will be unaffected? And bear in mind, there is a member of the FAA safety team in this call right now.
Well, I think, as a commercial pilot of airplanes, I think I can speak to my concern for drones, and I can speak on behalf of others that in my community who. One of our other instructors, an ATP pilot, he's flying jets, and he's had a couple of drones near miss him. I think we need to educate. We have a young man in our neighborhood over in Houston. We had a collapse, if you guys remember, a couple of weeks ago of a 3-story garage. The young man's a very great little drone pilot, very nice, does very good videos, wonderful. But he's up there at 800 feet. Circling with helicopters, okay? Trying to explain to him, look, there are some rules here that we need to follow, and that's exactly what the FAST team wants us to do. They want us to work within our own community to educate others. The FAA doesn't have the time to come and prosecute, although if they do, it's a $20,000 fine for interfering with an emergency operation. There's just certain things we want to get across to young drone pilots and enthusiasts, and old ones too, that just don't know. And some people just don't know. So I think the remote ID, from a lot of standpoints, especially for the national security, in some cases, I can see it, I can understand it. And it does make me clench my teeth too, because I think of DJI preventing me from taking off. And I'm like, oh, I know what happens. Now we're going to ID you. And the next thing to follow is, we have some SDK that we would like to implement on every drone. And now I'm hamstrung again. And, there's a glitch in the system. We'll call tech support. Here I'm at, calling, and, I can just see it, and that frustrates me, because somebody said the Wild West of drones. That's what we're in right now. It is the Wild West, and things are going to change drastically. What comes in 10 years will amaze you.
Anyone else want to take a stab at that question?
Yeah, I'll take one. I am yet to hear a good, solid, viable argument against remote ID. Any manned aircraft pilot, like Karl, my background's in manned aviation, will tell you the first thing you do, right, when you're going through your checklist is check your transponder. across Facebook and all these other groups, I've seen some just absolutely horrendously egregious arguments against remote ID. And the reality is when you're navigating our public airspace, you have no right, essentially, to a high degree of privacy, I shall say. Any manned aircraft has a transponder on board. They have ADS-B out. They have all these different devices to ultimately track your aircraft to make sure that our national airspace is safe. So, I think that most of the arguments against remote RD are deeply flawed. I think it's ultimately a great program. I think ultimately it's going to open our national airspace to some really great innovations, both for the drone industry and for the American public.
Andrew, do you have any comments on that?
See, I truthfully echo much of what Nick and Karl said, and we'll defer to them as more of the experts in this space. Again, a lot of our operations right now are focused on indoor operations, which again are a little bit outside of the FAA's traditional jurisdiction. But
on that note, we have a relevant question. Shazi, do you want to take it, or do you want me to do it?
You can go ahead and take it.
Okay, so kind of along the lines of ADS-B, what kind of permits do you guys need to start and run your business, and how long those permits take? Was the exams or any of the fees hard or complicated, and how many times do you have to renew them a year?
So to dive in on our end, if you're flying outdoors, you need your Part 107, and I'd say getting that's a fairly straightforward process. Overall, the test is 60 questions. It's multiple choice with only 3 options. And I think it's 70% is a passing grade. So overall, it's not an overly difficult test. And if you spend a little bit of time studying, you'll come out just fine. In terms of what else we would need for, say, disinfecting, again, indoors, that's outside of the FAA's usual jurisdiction. But if we wanted to do disinfecting outdoors, and the FAA has claimed that any spraying of disinfectant solutions in response to COVID would actually need a Part 137 exemption, which is a traditional agricultural exemption, which is a little bit frustrating because in ways, many of the disinfectant solutions that we would use for outdoor operations are actually not hazardous. So it shouldn't even have a hazmat claim and could fly under 107. But we start to get into semantics with the FAA, which is never a fun battle to be in. But I digress on that topic. I can tell you the process has been rather long to get that exemption. I first filed the application back in April, and we're now approaching the end of November. And I'm only just now in the pre-application meetings with the local FAA branch in Charlotte. And it's the first time they're even processing a 137 exemption. Again, it depends upon what you need to do. For most people, if you need a 107, fortunately, it's very straightforward. If you need something a little bit more complicated that hasn't been done too often, it can sometimes be fairly difficult, as we're learning with the 137.
So some of the waivers, some of the things we need. So I was out last week teaching a little bit, and we have a night flight thermal class, and for that particular type of privilege, it's something that the FAA through the 107 says we cannot fly past the civil twilight, right? And that's 30 minutes after sunset, 30 minutes before sunrise. It's considered nighttime, can't fly. So we have to get a waiver. So that waiver, for example, is one permit that I have to get from the FAA. I have to today, for example, we're right off the approach end, Class Echo surface airspace. I have to get and utilize something called the UAS facility maps. They're published. Excuse me, and I have to use those to determine how high I can fly, and then I have to get basically an authorization, and I can do that through something like Kitty Hawk or Skyward or AirMap. These are apps that allow me to get access from the FAA, and then I have to receive either an email confirmation or a text message, excuse me, to my phone before I can fly. I have to have that, and or else I'm flying against the rules because I'm violating airspace. And then last, we have TFRs. TFRs are temporary flight restrictions. We have to check for those, right? Above and beyond that, we also have other restrictions like weather. We have to have no less than 3 statute miles of visibility. We have to be 500 feet below clouds, 2,000 feet horizontal of clouds, and we have to stay no higher than 400 feet above the ground. Unless we're within 400 feet of an object, we can go 400 feet above that object. So there's rules we have to work within, and if we're going to break those rules, the FAA does have a consideration such as no flying over people. You can get a waiver for that, but you're going to put a parachute on your drone. You're going to abide by certain regulations that you have to follow in order to make them happy for that, right? We have line of sight. We can't fly the drone out of the line of sight. So all these regulations, there are exceptions, and you have to have your ducks in a row, and you really need to know what you're doing. It's always best to consult with somebody and to really understand those rules. And it's very important that 107 has a lot of information. It's not just about passing. You have to really understand it. You really need to know what you can or can't do, because that's what gives us a black eye to the community, right? Is, this kid who's out there on I-10 and Beltway 8 at 800 feet, he says, yeah, I was up there with the helicopters in the news. Well, dude, if that drone, if that little, Phantom or Mavic hits that rear rotor of that aircraft, it is done. It is trashed. It will crash. And you may be, if a pilot sees you flying that drone, you may be preventing that live flight from coming in there. So those rules are important, and we got to abide by them and teach and help others learn, so that we don't have that black eye.
Okay, I have received a question from someone who's not in the chat, but who wanted to ask the question because he's going to be watching this later. Out of all of you guys' locations, what is the most interesting spot you've flown at? What is the coolest spot or the coolest photo? What is the coolest location that you've flown at currently? I know Nick is going to fly at Johnson Space Center, and that's going to probably top everybody, but he hasn't done it yet. So,
Karl,
and
you
by
want to
the
go
way,
first?
oh, sorry. And by the way, if anyone still has any questions, we're coming up on the last 10, 15 minutes. So if you have a question, please ask it. It's now or never. Andrew, go.
Sure. I've had the privilege of flying in a lot of really, really cool places. I'd say definitely my favorite venue to date has been Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is home of the Atlanta Falcons. They just, the stadium itself looks like a spaceship coming out of the ground, and being able to fly a drone in an NFL stadium was a surreal experience. But we've gotten to fly at a lot of other really cool places, like I'm trying to think, Bryant-Denny Stadium, which is where Alabama plays football. I've flown in Texas A&M's football stadium and basketball arena, Georgia, Vanderbilt, UNC, NC State, and just a lot of really cool universities, which are in professional stadiums where drones typically aren't being flown. So it's been cool to break ground in some of these unique venues for drones.
Karl, Nick?
Yeah. So
Go ahead,
I'm sorry. Did you? No, you sure? Yeah. I don't have anything very neat. The nuclear plant was pretty cool. That was interesting, and it was pretty spooky. And then done a lot of work with both Kansas City Southern Railroad and BNSF Railroad. Being in those environments has been pretty interesting and pretty cool when you're at these huge train yards. If you guys like trains as a kid, that Thomas the Train thing, it's kind of cool, man. Being on the railroad tracks, it's really neat to be in that environment, to see these big trains. So those are the two environments I think that have been pretty cool for me.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, Andrew and Karl definitely have me beat here. I can't beat a nuclear reactor or an NFL stadium. I think the coolest place I've flown is the side of a Lone Star Flight Museum, just through, some of the airplanes that they have there. But a nuclear power plant in an NFL stadium, that's pretty sweet. So, yeah.
we're literally showing a photo of you flying through a B-17, and you just showed us a video of you flying through a Mars rover. And do you want to talk about any of those or no?
No, I mean, the thing that makes it challenging is that they are pretty tight, you know. I have to say I'm pretty jealous of Andrew here being able to fly inside of the NFL stadium. You know, we had this meeting at the Texans stadium about a couple years ago, and they didn't let us fly there, but that would have been the dream, right?
Okay, I think we're mostly exhausted of questions. Does anyone else want to ask a question? Okay, then we're going to ask one last question, which is just a big wrap-up question, is where do you think your company is going to be going in the next 5 years, or the business you think you're going to be going? Do you have plans to continue? Do you have plans to stay, or do you have plans to see it go to the end? And what is the goal of the end goal of the business?
Ooh, so I guess I'll dive in. That's certainly a loaded question.
Yeah, it's a big loaded question.
I don't know. When I first started this company, I couldn't even imagine it getting to this place. I knew I was excited about the product I wanted to build and the way I thought it could change the world. And in many ways, the opinion on and perspective on what the technology can do has evolved as a company has as well. But I think what I take the most amount of value in with my work is seeing the ways in which the technology that our company is developing can really impact the world for the better. And that gives me a lot of joy and passion showing up for work every day. And now I'd say beyond that, actually being able to build this company and now have a double-digit workforce and start to create this work culture where people feel energetic and purpose-driven with showing up for work every day. I take a lot of meaning in that. So I can't imagine wanting to do anything else anytime soon. Again, we're on almost what I would call this hamster wheel track now of most traditional startups, where it's trying to scale as quickly yet responsibly as possible. So hopefully in 5 years, you're seeing disinfecting and cleaning drones being adopted across the country, and we're just making those operations much safer than they currently are today.
Awesome. Karl, Nick?
So I'll just go here. You know, with Skyline, don't know where Skyline's headed. Really not too concerned with it. I've got so much work right now in so many different areas. You know, I would love to spend more time with Skyline. I'd like to see Skyline drones do some more things, you know, and I'd like to be more innovative with that company. We'll have to see. But my hope is that my goal, I mean, you know, I'm that middle-aged guy. My goal is to inspire not just the young and not just the middle-aged or the old, but just to inspire others to get out there and get your hands dirty with the drone. Doesn't really matter what kind of drone it is. You know, that SEMA X5C. I mean, that's perfect. Go and get your hands around one. Enjoy it. Share it with others. And it's a great way. I mean, it's just a great way to kind of let go and to get a little chance to fly. I mean, flying is to me is just a love and a passion. So my goal is, you know, hopefully I can influence and help others. I can network. You know, I'm very fortunate. You know, a couple weeks ago, I was on a meeting with Colin Gwynn, who's an interesting guy, right? If you guys know who he is, he's pretty sharp. He used to be the CEO of DJI, and he was with 3DR. He won the amazing race a couple, I guess, last season or whatever. But meeting industry, you know, professionals. I really enjoy doing that. I like hearing their vision. I like listening to guys like Andrew, who are up and coming leaders in the industry, like Nick. These guys have visions. That's cool, and they're right. Don't lose that. Take it. You know, take your dream and go to that next level. Especially as a youngster, get out there, and before you know it, you'll be 51 years old like me. And when you're 51 like me, you go to bed at 8:30 or 9. I'm telling you, it's not fun. So get out there and learn, and don't be afraid. if you don't know what you're doing, just go get trained. It's that easy. You can start somewhere, and there's not a right or wrong way to do it. So I implore each of you guys who are interested in drones, find what's right for you. Some of you are smarter than others. Some of you may just are kind of looking at the peripheral, whatever. If you ever want to come hang out and fly, if I'm available, I can fly with you. If not, I can introduce you to my buddies who are flying professionally. They're flying cell towers. They're flying whatever locally in Houston. Come out with us. We'll give you just a front row seat, and you can see what it's all about. And you can kind of see, hey, this is pretty cool, or hey, this is not for me. So that's it for me.
Nick?
Yeah, that's a great question. And another good person to Google is Colin Gwen. He's actually based out of Austin as well. I think, right, Karl? Is he still based in Austin or no?
Yeah, he's got a group called Gwen Partners. We were interviewing him to do some media stuff for us. But yeah, he's in Austin.
Nice. Yeah. So everyone go give Colin Gwen a Google. Anyway, going back to your question about where we headed, ultimately, my full intention is to continue to work in the drone industry. As I said, I really believe that this is the Wild West of technology. And I also believe that this is just the future of aviation. I think probably by the time that, we're middle-aged, we're not going to see manned aviation in its current form. We're going to see almost exclusively unmanned systems. So I fully plan to continue my career here in the drone industry. As for drone parks worldwide, the reality is that we are in a downturn right now due to COVID. However, our vision still remains steadfast to build stadiums where anyone can come and learn how to fly a drone, and ultimately democratize access to drone technology. The best advice I would just give to anybody is just get out there, shake as many hands as you can, get to know and hear about as many use cases for drone technology as you can, and ultimately just embrace the future of this incredibly, incredibly disruptive technology. So thank you so much for having me, Bernard. It's been a joy. Thank you to Karl and to Andrew for sitting on this panel with me. And I've really enjoyed hearing what you guys have to say. I think you're both amazing drone industry leaders as well. And just thank you all for your time.
That was a great roundup. Thank you so much, Nick. My name is Bernard. I am the president of University Drone Pilots, a student organization dedicated at the University of Houston to training students how to fly. Shazi?
And my name is Shazi Jhaver. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Collegiate Entrepreneurship Organization, and our mission is to connect as many students to local and statewide and national entrepreneurs, as well as to help you guys uncover your potential as leaders in whatever you choose to be. And thank you guys once again for coming out tonight.
And that is a wrap. Thank you so much. Have a good week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you, guys.